little bit and start unpacking what where your research has led you, you know, because you guys are out in the weeds and it's fucking cool and inspiring.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of take it into like what the future potential is.
Could I just, in your natural position, looking at each other, just so, there we go.
Hello, sir. Yeah, man. This is awesome. This feels cool.
I'm Matt Niess, owner and winemaker of North American Press, and I exclusively make wine utilizing hybrid varieties that are grown sustainably here in California.
Hello, my name is Christopher Renfro. I'm co-founder of the 𝑑𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 project. We are a nonprofit based in San Francisco. We are focused on bringing diversity, inclusion to the wine industry. We also focus on working with hybrid grapes, native grapes, apples, anything that can be fermented to try and show people how wine can be made.
So how, you know, the 𝑑𝒓𝒂𝒃 project is doing so many incredible things in the wine industry, making it more inclusive and breaking down social barriers and this, you know, bringing people into an industry where there's been a lot of gatekeeping. But you also talk about this interest in hybrids. I mean, how are those related, and why, or I guess also like why the interest in hybrid varieties with the 𝑑𝒂𝒃 project specifically?
I mean, I think, to be honest, I would say a lot of it's by luck. When I first met you, I would say that you were the person that introduced me into hybrid varietals, which was super exciting to find out about grapes that needed not less care, but could possibly be better growing for the environment, less sprays, resistance to high temperatures, frost tolerance, all types of really cool things.
Yeah.
That felt like something out of the norm. And the flavor profiles of what these varieties offered were also more interesting. I think my background being in wine was coming from a classic place, which felt super stuffy.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother drank a lot of like wine coolers when I was younger. So I always had this vision of working with these grapes with somewhat more tropical or just different flavor profiles that could be maybe like a natural wine cooler.
Totally. Yeah.
So also it feels like it pays homage to indigenous people that were already here with some of the wild species growing. It's a cool part of American history with people breeding grapes to try and save the wine industry in America. I think about something like muscadine, and we could talk more about this later on, but there's a man named Booker T. Watley who was breeding varieties of muscadine at Tuskegee, and he was breeding them for selling as food, but also winemaking and a bunch of other paths that he thought could help Black people be financially viable in the South during a hard time. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about you? What got you into your hybrid career that you're at now?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is some overlap from what you were saying also. I first started farming, like my first hybrid vineyard that I got access to was this 𝒂𝒃 Noir vineyard in Sebastopol. And, you know, I've heard the term like disease resistance. I mean, you hear it out there just like in horticulture in general, you know, just working with disease resistant plants. It wasn't until I started farming these grapes where I really like internalized what that means, you know, disease resistance. Like all of a sudden that means not only do I not have to put these chemicals on the plants and into the environment or onto the fruit that we're using to make the wine, but we're also, as a vineyard worker in the fields, like I don't have to work with these chemicals. And so there's this whole other, you know, layer of it also where you know, a lot of the field workers and vineyard workers here in California come from underrepresented communities, you know, specifically the Latinx community. And so there's this whole social element of it also, where now you're not subjecting the agricultural industry in the wine industry to these chemicals potentially. And so once I realized that and had this kind of like aha moment out there in the vineyard, like that we could potentially not need to work with synthetic chemicals in the vineyard, I just felt like, how could I not like keep this information to myself? Like I needed to just explore that and try and dig into this rabbit hole that I was in deeper, trying to figure out how far I could take this, But then, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's also this other, there's all these other elements to it too, like the native flavors and what I just find really fascinating. This whole, my whole journey kind of started just with an interest in quote unquote American wine, how can we really make a more authentic American wine that isn't just what does vinifera taste like when it's planted in American soil. The whole wine industry is so Eurocentric, especially here in California, and traditionally in the wine industry, you're kind of taught to pick up how terroir can affect, Pinot Noir, for example, when it's grown in all these other parts of the country. And to me, I found so much more inspiration from these, in parts of Italy where they're trying to preserve these heritage indigenous Italian grapes. There's that book, it's Native Grapes of Italy, and it's this thick, and there's thousands of grapes in there. And it's not just about, the noble French grapes. It's I found a lot of inspiration in these farmers that are trying to kind of draw a line in the sand and saying, no, I'm not going to rip out these indigenous grapes to my homeland to plant more of the same 5 or 7 popular varieties. And so taking that idea, I kind of wanted to take that idea, but then use it here in North America, where there's, I don't know the exact number, 20 to 30 some odd species of grapes in North America. There's so much potential there to work with these varieties and to explore and to say, hey, we can grow vinifera here in California fairly well. It makes amazing wine, but what about all these other grapes that have been here for thousands of years? Why not let's take inspiration from these smaller old school growers in Italy and actually work with our indigenous grapes here and see how far that goes and what local wine can mean other than just the terroir and its effect on European flavors.
It's funny. So you saying that is kind of, so we're going to talk about past, present, future, all these things. Some stuff that's been coming up lately, specifically what you just said about terroir, but I think about America as a whole and the grapes that grow in the wild everywhere in America.
Yeah.
My friend is a botanist back in Kentucky, and I've known him for 20 plus years, and he's recently been sending me photos of grapes growing in the wild.
Oh, wow, cool.
That have been there for such a long time.
Totally.
There were wineries on the Ohio River, so starting to find that kind of history, where are they making wine from this type of stuff. And then my grandmother's house is in San Antonio, Texas. And last year while visiting, I started paying attention to the grapes growing in the creek that I grew up in as a kid. So there's wild Mustang grapes growing there.
So cool.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have known this really if I wouldn't have gone with you to Russian River to start seeing California growing.
Yeah.
Just
It's even here in California, and that's a big surprise to a lot of people in the viticulture industry here. I've met growers that have been growing grapes for decades, and the wine industry is so steeped into this idea that you need to work with vinifera that they weren't even aware that there are native grapes to here in California. You know, there's 𝑣𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 californica, that's like the top half of the state, and then there's 𝑣𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 georgiana, which is the southern half of the state. They call it the wild desert grape. And yeah, no, I think that's so cool to actually start to work with the indigenous species of all of these different regions around North America. Like, even though, like, right now, you know, my thing is really trying to explore the potential for growing hybrids in California, but they're French American hybrids. These are also grapes that are from other parts of the country, but not necessarily California. Yeah. And what I think is so cool is actually being able to work with California native grapes. And you know, there's native vines all over the place, and there's also these like natural hybrids, like what we saw in the Russian River. Yep. Like, there's a lot of times when you go out, especially here in Sonoma County, like in West County, you see grapes growing everywhere, and the vine, it looks like a pure Californica vine. Like, it has the the ampelography, the same leaf pattern, and the tomentum on the vine and on the leaf. But then you see these grapes that are like fully loaded with like all this fruit.
Yep.
And
not stringy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because a lot of times the native grapes are like they're dioecious, so they're male or female. So what means they require pollination. So like in the spring when they set fruit, they get this really erratic fruit set, and you don't get these big lush like full clusters. And so when I see that in the wild, to me that tells me that like that is a vine that is a natural hybrid. And so it's a Californica vine that's been pollinated from who knows what the vine is, but some neighboring, vineyard of European grapes. And even like the hallmark native California grape that you see in all the native California plant nurseries, Rogers Red. I mean, every native nursery here in California carries this grape, and I think at one point they thought it was a pure Californica, and then they've more recently done DNA analysis on it, and it turns out it's a natural hybrid of Californica that has been crossed with Alicante Bouschet, which is why it gets so much of that intense red color. Yeah, exactly, which helps turn the leaves red, which is why it's called Rogers Red. But yeah, like that, I think that's so exciting, like working with these, like making regional wines around the country based on the native grapes from that area. Like, not just working with hybrids in general, but really even taking it a step further and focusing on this really intense regionality and preserving that, I don't know, like when I go wine tasting, like how cool would it be to go around the country and go wine tasting and actually taste the indigenous species of the grapes that are from that area, and actually tasting these flavors of these different regions as opposed to just, the terroir.
I mean, I feel like it's coming.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a cool segue into how do you feel like you have gotten to here? Like, who has helped you with your studies, even like as far as to like the hybrids you've planted at 𝒓𝒂𝒃? How did you make those selections?
Yeah.
How did you get cuttings? Like all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, when I first started, there was this. How did that go? How did I get introduced to that guy?
Where is this, like 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 or something, or no?
Yeah, you did it. That's it.
That's funny.
𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, yeah.
Yes.
What's the owner's name of that place? Oh my God. Anyways, yeah, 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆. So I started, so I kind of went down this rabbit hole of like native grapes. And 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, like they're doing really cool stuff over in Missouri. They are working with grapes specifically that were bred by 𝒕𝒉 Munson, who his claim to fame is like helping the world figure out how to solve the phylloxera issue in France. And then he's kind of, I think there's like a statue of him in France. He's the one that helped figure out that you can graft these European varieties onto this American rootstock. But in addition to that, like that's his kind of claim to fame. But his other, a lot of his time was spent just breeding grapes, and so he bred hundreds of different grapes. And at 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, that's kind of what they're focused on, are these 𝒕𝒑𝒉 Munson varietals. And so I actually flew out to Missouri, went to their estate, tasted their wines, and they introduced me to a gentleman named 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, who was a horticulture professor at University of Illinois. He's now retired and moved out to California after he retired, and he brought so he had this crazy collection of native grapes from all over the country.
That's amazing.
And he brought them to California, and he had hoped on finding land to plant them, and because California is so cost prohibitive, he had a difficult time and ended up moving to Oregon. Well, Oregon has really strict like agricultural guidelines on like what you can bring into the state, and so he wasn't allowed to bring all of this plant material into Oregon. And so I met him at his house in Sacramento. I brought my truck, and we just loaded up my truck. I had to make 2 trips, and those are those vines that I gave you.
That's the stuff growing on the side of your house?
That's the stuff growing on the side of my house.
That's
Yeah, and I still have them growing on the side of my house because I too am finding the land really cost prohibitive in California, and I don't have my own land to do these my hopes and dreams. And so his grapes are many of them, not all of them, but many of them are still in pots in the side of my house now. But anyways, Bill, he was the one that really gave me this like leg up to be able to like educate myself. So he gave me all these grape varieties. I passed them on to you, a few of them, and I was able to plant some and in the 𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒄𝒕 vineyard, and I still have some. But then he also he introduced me to a whole slew of other professionals in the industry that are breeding grapes and that have been breeding grapes for decades. And there's this group of individuals that I'm in contact with. I mean, they have so much knowledge, much more knowledgeable than I am, and they are very generous with, they just get excited when they've been breeding grapes for 40 years, and they just get excited when there's younger people that are interested in this, and they are very willing to share their information, and they're excited to pass on their knowledge to people. And so he was actually huge in giving me the tools to like educate myself and network with other people.
It's before we go into the varieties at 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 and how you pick those, I think what you're saying right now is it feels like a common theme in hybrids where people are getting these collections from people.
Totally.
And getting to save them and keep them going.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if that's how hybrids are still like existing here, is they've just been passed along to different people that protect them, keep growing them, because Phyllolia is the same type of thing.
Totally, yeah.
Where it's a repository, a collection that was just sitting there hidden for like 40 years, and nobody even understood what it was.
Right.
They thought it was just table grapes.
Yeah.
So I wonder how many of these like spots are just sitting right under our noses.
They're out there.
Yeah, like literally just
yeah,
sitting
no, yeah, on people's properties for sure, yeah.
So with 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, how did you select the varieties that you went in with those?
So that was, so from this like group of people that I've been in contact with through Bill, I was able just to start taking educated guesses on what would do well in California. This hasn't, so at 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 I planted like 30 to 40 different hybrid varieties. It's just like an acre block. So there's like 5 vines of each variety. It's really just an experiment to like see what does well in California, because what I want to do, to my knowledge at least, hasn't ever been done before, like in California from like a commercial standpoint. And so no one really knows like which varieties to grow here in California. And so I was able to ask a lot of questions and just take some educated guesses based on like the length of the growing season that is required for some of these grapes, or at least in other parts of the country, like what types of soils have these grapes performed well in, coupled with their disease resistance, and when they ripen and all that. And so that's why I did this like just shotgun approach of just trying so many different varieties. So with this vineyard in Healdsburg, it was trying to focus on, there's very little water, and so we're technically are irrigating the vines, but like just enough to like keep them alive basically. I mean, we turn on the water like twice the entire growing season.
That's amazing.
But that's kind of the point. Like, let's stress the crap out of these vines. Let's not spray them. Let's not give them any water. Let's do the minimal amount of inputs as possible. And of those 40, like maybe a couple of them, or maybe a handful of them, like let's say 5, so like 10-ish% of these 40 varieties make it and they thrive and they're doing well. Like it's not really necessarily about trying to make all of these 40 varieties work, but let's like figure out which ones are going to do well with no water and can handle the heat and cannot be sprayed with anything. And so basically I just kind of took a educated guess on trying to find these really hardy grapes, but that also require a long growing season. So a lot of hybrids are cold hardy varieties, like especially the ones that are from University of Minnesota and stuff, and they have a much shorter growing season. And so planting them in a place like Healdsburg, where it's really hot and dry, they would just ripen in like June,
Yep.
And no one wants to start harvest in June.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what I'm trying to replicate at Alamany, since it's free
yeah.
public land.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that goes back to like the no spray and the disease resistance thing too. I mean, you're working on public land. I mean, you need to have vines, right? That you're not using chemicals on.
Yeah, I can't spray sulfur because people walk through the public park all the time. But it's also something that I've been thinking about a lot is if people aren't supposed to be walking to the vineyard, what are pollinators dealing with? Birds,
Totally.
rabbits, deer. No one talks about that part. If sulfur is potentially dangerous to your eyes, to your lungs, throat, can burn your skin, then what's happening to tiny little insects? Like, are they just going completely blind? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think about that because no one talks about that part, even though it's organic farming.
Yeah.
So.
I think I was doing a little bit of research on this, just like Googling around online and stuff. And there was some paper that I had found that was tying, even if they're like organic sprays, like sulfur or other organic sprays, even though you're allowed to spray them and there's less impact on human health, they're finding that the impact on these insects actually happens in their gut. And so they're like, these little insects are on the grape leaves, and let's say they're chewing a little bit of the grape leaf, and then they ingest all these chemicals into them. It's like highly concentrated, and so they're dying off. A lot of pollinators are dying off because they have issues in their abdomen with consuming these chemicals. And so I mean, I think you're right. We can't just look at it in terms of, even though they don't want, you still can't spray sulfur. But I think that's awesome. You got to think more holistically, and look at the whole environmental impact and not just on the immediate direct, effect on humans. It's all interconnected web anyways.
I mean, it's huge though when you do talk about, because you were saying marginalized workers,
Yeah.
their health,
Yeah.
things like that. But the financing around it, the money, the amount of money it takes to pay for spraying.
Oh yeah.
And
Not just the
labor.
materials, but the labor and yeah.
I think about that with Napa, Sonoma, and how much work goes into the noble varieties
Mm-hmm.
and the monoculture of keeping it Napa, keeping it Sonoma, and how much money could possibly be saved for these businesses
Yeah.
if they were to switch over to different varieties.
Yeah, no, it makes good business sense. Business sense also. I mean, there's like I took this. I did before I got into wine. I did before I got into wine, I was doing engineering, but in between, I went to a junior college taking viticulture and winemaking classes just to kind of see if this was something that I was interested in doing. And there was a whole class on sustainability, and what they talked about a lot, you know, in order for something to like truly be sustainable, I mean, it can't just be like it's only good for the environment, because if it's like too expensive or, you know, nobody buys it, then it doesn't matter, because it's not going to be a solution long term. And so there's like these three tenets, you know, of sustainability, like environmental, social, but then the business aspect too. You know, we've touched on the social aspect of reducing just the direct effects of less chemicals on vineyard workers, and obviously, you know, the most obvious one is obviously the environmental aspects of not having these chemicals in the watershed, or, you know, on the pollinators, and being able to maintain a biodiverse vineyard. But then there's, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's the business aspect too, where it actually helps your bottom line if you're spending less money on chemicals.
The amount of time it saves me at Filoli,
Oh yeah.
like to not spray, to not have to worry
Totally.
about the fruit
Yeah.
being just shattered, completely covered in mildew.
Yeah. And when you spray, like you're supposed, you know, you need to spray when it's not windy, so you don't have these drift issues. And so you got to spray at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning when it, you know, when it's not windy. And I don't want to do that.
No,
I
I mean,
don't.
it's a huge time constraint if you have family, if you
Yeah,
have
totally.
a job.
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to farm that Baco Noir vineyard that I farm in 𝑨𝒓𝒂𝒃 if I had to wake up every week at 3 in the morning and spray it. Yeah, like my wife works night shift. I got kids at home. I can't just like go and do that. I mean, I literally wouldn't be able to do this project if I had to spray these grapes.
Well, and it has to be consistent. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
noticing at Alemany is the Pinot every year is just a problem.
Yeah.
You know, I met Deirdre Hinken,
Oh yeah.
and she recommended that I give it one more year to try silica. So
Okay.
to try horsetail,
Yeah.
to see if that'll work. But I really want to graft it over because
Yeah.
the hybrids are already setting and they're fine. And
Yeah. Well, it is a good. So there are a couple in the Baco Noir vineyard that I have that I'm working with. You know, the vineyard's like 95% Baco, but there are a few other non-resistant vines. I don't know what they are, but they're not resistant. And it is kind of a neat thing to, you know, just have a couple of them at least as like an educational thing. Like, look at here's the vineyard.
Yep.
And I don't spray anything on any of these vines. You know, 95% of these vines look amazing.
Yep.
And then here's an example of a non-disease resistant vine in the same exact spot, in the same row.
Yep.
And it gets so much powdery mildew on it in the location where the vineyard is. You know, this is West County. This is Sebastopol, so it gets a lot of fog. I let the grass go really high, so there's not a lot of airflow. There's a creek that runs by it, so there's actually a lot of, for California standards, there's a lot of humidity in this vineyard. Anyways, and so there's a couple vines that the powdery mildew is so bad that the grapes don't even get to ripen. They split before veraison even. And so it is, I mean, just what you're saying about Alemany, I mean, I think it might be a good idea even just to keep a couple of them, just more of like an educational thing too, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
it's a steady vineyard. You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's supposed to
totally.
produce something.
right.
But Yeah, it's a little heartbreaking right now when you walk
Sure.
in there and you're just like, but the amount of work it takes to spray it, even with Serenade, which is this organic fungicide,
Yeah.
it's just not working. It would have to be like every few days, and I don't have time to do that. And the resources, the cost of that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about like organic sprays too. Is yes, the chemicals are not synthetic, but because they're not synthetic, you have to spray more often.
Yeah.
So it's something that kind of I feel like doesn't really get talked about with organics. It's awesome, of course. Like that's a step in the right direction to use these less harmful chemicals, but you do have to spray them more often, and so it's actually more labor, and then more expense on the material side. And then also, if you're spraying like a commercial vineyard, then it's you're every time you spray, you're doing these tractor passes, and so you're getting the soil compaction also. So yeah, I mean it's just wild to me to think that there's so much talk about organic viticulture, regenerative agriculture, that to me it's like there's the elephant in the room is like there are these grapes that you can grow that like literally you can just like we don't even have to talk about any of this stuff.
Set 'em and
We just
forget
like kind of transcend this whole idea, of spraying them. And at least that's been my experience. I'm not saying all hybrids are like that, but there for sure are some varieties that you could grow out here, out west, where it's drier, that you don't have to spray them.
Yeah, the entire Fire Lily garden it's never been sprayed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, totally.
For 40 years, it's never been sprayed.
And actually all those vines look great.
127
100
different varieties,
totally.
and they've never needed
that's
to be
true.
sprayed.
Yeah, that's
Which is
amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's
And
see.
it's right next to the coast too, so like there's like definitely this like maritime.
There's sitting
thing
water
going
on the
on, right?
property,
Yeah,
all kinds
yeah.
of stuff. So yeah, Matt, what would you describe a hybrid grape as, or versus a wild species grape, and how are they connected or related? Or
Yeah. Well, I mean, just technically speaking, I mean, a hybrid is it's a cross of two different grapes. I mean, even in vinifera, all grapes are just crosses of other grapes. The kind of easy example, I guess, is like Cabernet Sauvignon is a cross of Cab Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. And a hybrid is literally just, it's a natural thing that just happens out in the wild, but it's just, but instead of two vinifera grapes crossing, it's just an American grape crossing with a grape of different species. Like you can even have hybrids within North America. I mean, you could have a hybrid of Californica and Riparia. I mean, that's still a hybrid because it's still two different species. But yeah, most people think of a hybrid as like the French American hybrids, where it's like Baco Noir, so is a cross of Vitis riparia that was pollinated by Folle Blanche, or maybe it's the other way around, I can't remember. But basically, it's a cross of Vitis riparia and Folle Blanche, which is a white grape of southwestern France. And what was the other part of the question?
just how they
Yeah.
how they relate to maybe wild species, or maybe you're different than wild species.
Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, I think it's important to note, too, I think there's a lot of, not to use this word, but there's a lot of disinformation about hybrids. Even by like prominent journalists. I mean, I read an article, it was like a year ago, where they were claiming that the future of the wine industry is going to be made like, it was an article like about hybrids, but then it was like, I don't remember exactly the title, but it was basically something like, the future of the wine industry is going to be made in a lab. And they had like this just like stock photo that they found on Unsplash or somewhere of this person like in a white coat with like safety glasses on and like rubber gloves and like vials, and then there was like a vine or something sticking out of one of the vials or some like crazy picture. And like that's not, I was like, what? That's not how you make a hybrid at all. Like there's no white coats, there's no lab involved. I mean, it happens, it happens out in the wild all the time, which is which I think kind of goes back to this whole like native grape thing. You know, I mean, I'm interested in breeding grapes. I don't have the probably the patience for it, but I also just don't have the time for it. At least right now in my life. But that's where I get really excited about these wild hybrids that have just naturally occurred out there. You know, if it can. So one difficult thing about breeding is you cross two grapes. You know, you shake just like you were doing. You shake the pollen from one, you know, pollinating grape cluster onto the flowers of another. You know, this is very like a simplified thing, but a simplified explanation. But you know, you're shaking the pollen onto an open flowered cluster that's connected to a vine, and then you plant those seeds of that grape in the ground, and then that's the hybrid, right? Like the next season. But let's say you plant like 1,000 seeds. You know, I don't know what the number is, but it's very small. Like the amount that you're actually going to that are viable and that turn into something that produces fruit and is disease resistant and have all the attributes that you want. You know, of that 1,000, you know, there's only going to be literally like a couple vines that you're going to want to propagate. And so the cool thing about wild hybrids is like Mother Nature's already done that for you. Like if the vine is growing and you're seeing the fruit, then it's literally already done all that work for you. Then you can just propagate that vine. And I think that's so cool because then you also know that wherever that vine is growing, but let's say here in California, you know, these, or all these vines that like your friends and family members are finding on their property, you know, if it's growing there, then that means it can already withstand whatever the pressures are from that, at least that specific region. And so I think that's so cool to like just find these wild hybrids and then at least propagate them in that local area. And then let's make wine from those, you know?
So this idea of like hybrids and regionality, something like that, thinking about the East Coast in early America.
Totally.
And, you know, so you're working with a vineyard right now that's planted in the 60s. But one of the things that I've been fascinated by is finding historic documents on hybrids being grown way back in like the 1800s, things like that. I actually have something from the Voice of Paul Masson.
Okay.
So this is from Paul Masson, and it's talking about, I actually have a few different things, but this is dated December 1965, Saratoga, California, and it mentions Catawba right here. It mentions Lord Delaware.
1820.
Yep.
The Native American grape, the Catawba, was found to make an acceptable wine. There you go. What do you know? See, they even knew about it back then.
So Thomas Jefferson was working with Catawba already. So this is crazy thing about 1820. And then, you know, fast forward to Widmer's wine cellars in Naples, New York. This is really awesome little piece that I found at a yard sale, but this tells you Widmer's varietals.
Oh, I think you sent me this. You sent me a picture of this.
So Delaware,
or maybe you just posted it.
Elvira, Catawba, a ton
Moore's
of others.
Diamond. I have this planted. We have some of that planted up at Alder Springs, actually.
Yeah, and this is from the 40s.
Totally. Yeah, no, I mean this isn't new to North America. Like working with these varieties, you know. I mean, I think the history is complicated on like what actually happened, but I think a lot of it has to do with Prohibition, where a lot of these varieties fell out of favor,
kind of pushed out, maybe.
Like during Prohibition, a lot of the vineyards got ripped out, and then after Prohibition, a lot of these varieties just fell out of favor because I think we've started realizing that you can grow vinifera here in California, it still requires some inputs and some hand-holding, but you can do it so much easier than other parts of the country.
Totally.
And so I think we just kind of didn't look back, just threw the book away about how to grow American grapes, and then and then pushed, and then all the money came flooding into promoting these noble varieties, and then we didn't
Chardonnay,
even,
Cab,
and there's these old historical grapes from the 1700s, like Catawba. I think you can even go back a little bit earlier than Catawba. There's a grape called Alexander that I had assumed was totally extinct. And then I know Sydney Love she's been doing a little bit of research on this, and so I believe, I haven't talked to her about this yet, but I believe she's found some of these Alexander vines.
That's amazing. In Virginia somewhere?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
amazing.
And
And just like what you were saying earlier, they've just been on these, the Thomas Jefferson vineyard, they've kept a couple vines, that are still around. And so there is this really rich history of working with these varieties in North America, and we kind of just, I feel got off track, at least, with trying to preserve this regionality of these grapes.
Well, so one cool thing that I think you're doing, is every time 280's been able to come visit you as a cohort, which has been amazing, you hosting us and showing the world of hybrids to the apprentices, which I think is mind-blowing to them. Most people don't even know this kind of stuff exists, but for it to be part of the apprenticeship program to kind of decolonize their mind on wine. It's great that you've been collecting hybrids from different producers around America and share that with people.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good segue into the future of hybrids. And now you have a pretty good lineup of wines that you've been able to make, and I don't know, it's been really cool to take them to ABV. Anything but vinifera that Jade Marley has helped put on, and for the other young people and older people growing hybrids in America, for them to come to this one event and taste each other's wines, it's pretty special. So maybe what do you foresee your future in hybrids right now, or wild grapes?
Yeah, I'm really trying to take the long game here, and have this long view on where I want North American press to go. And for the foreseeable future, it's going to be continuing just what I'm doing right now, which is basically trying to figure out which hybrid varieties should we be growing in California that require less water, can handle the heat, and no sprays. And finding growers that are willing to work with these varieties, is actually kind of a good time. It's a terrible time for the growers out there right now. They just had their worst season in decades because the market, kind of fell out from under them. And as a grower, it's really hard to pivot. You got plants on the ground. You can't just change your business model instantly,
Grafting.
And so, but the good news is, there's always a silver lining, or maybe that's not the right word, but there's always this kind of full circle of life kind of a thing happening where when one thing is ending, something else is coming up. And I feel now is really a good time to start introducing these varieties to growers and say, hey, you have a lot of uncontracted fruit right now, and your risk is fairly high to continue growing these varieties if you're not able to sell this fruit. You can spend another whole growing season growing these grapes and then potentially not be able to sell them again. Or I'll sign a contract. I'm looking for growers that are willing to try some of these varieties and see what does well on their property, or graft over your Cab or Chardonnay or whatever to some of these varieties. Maybe you've never worked with them before, but I'll sign a contract and I'll buy the fruit. And so a lot of growers now are like, sure, like, yeah, let's do it.
It's
And
a great opportunity, right?
yeah. So I think for the foreseeable future, like that's really basically what I'm going to be doing. But my long view really is like just honing it closer and closer and closer to home. And right now it's like kind of this like broad look at North American grape species, but really over time, I do want to work more and more with wild Californica hybrids, or working with breeding my own grapes from Vitis Californica and Vitis Georgiana, and being able, and maybe they're like these multi-species hybrids, where you're getting the disease resistance from some of these other American grapes, like Riparia, but then you're getting and I don't even know really what it is, but you're getting whatever the essence of these native California grapes is. I have made like these kind of carboy fermentations of them, but really, so maybe it's like higher tannin, or maybe it's just like a unique flavor, but carrying through whatever makes Californica Californica, and just making a more like closer to home hybrid varieties that also you don't need that you still don't need the inputs and the sprays, and can handle this less.
Yeah, what do you think the experiences of contacting these people now and asking them to graft over?
Yeah, I mean it's slow going. I mean it's literally just sending one email at a time, like networking with people, asking which growers. There are just certain growers out there that are more willing to just try something new, and they're already growing like underrepresented vinifera varieties. They're growing Trousseau and and Menthia and stuff like that, and so there are growers that are already kind of into finding the next thing, and so networking and trying to figure out who those growers are, and then it's just like one email at a time, trying to educate them and talk to them about putting a plan in place for grafting over some of their vineyard. But it's slow. I mean, I get a lot of I did actually put an ad out one time in like a wine industry focused classifieds, and literally people went out of their way. They would respond to my ad not saying, "Oh wow, that's cool, I have some land for you," but they would literally go out of their way saying, "This is a terrible idea. Why are you doing this? This makes hybrids make terrible wine."
Oh my god!
And like, why? Like, why? You literally, when you were so worked up about like just seeing this ad that you, and so there's a lot of the stigma against hybrids like is real, and people, and then and sometimes I would respond and I would just say like, honestly, because I was curious, because at the time I was maybe like less confident in that what I was doing with North American Press was a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I was like, well, wait, maybe like you're onto something and you have some information that like, I don't know. So like, why are you saying that this is a bad idea and that this makes good wine?
People have said they're poisonous.
And then their response would be like, oh, because they're hybrids. I'm like, oh, okay. You don't actually have any idea what you're talking about. You're just regurgitating the same stigma, the same stuff that you've been told over the years, and you actually don't have any practical information for me.
It's been funny trying to sell hybrids to the public also.
Yeah.
Because there aren't that many that I find being distributed, and there was a moment in time, I think 2 years ago, where all of a sudden everyone was picking up hybrids in their books, at least one producer.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. But yeah, talking to the public about these grapes kind of having special powers and, talking about the farming practices, how it could be better for, people on the vineyard without sprays, the ecological benefits with less water use, all this kind of stuff. It feels like people younger people were very interested.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like, for me, hybrids are really cool in the natural wine scene. But I think like conventional wine, it's not there yet. But the younger, cool, hip kids are like, I'll try something weird.
Yeah.
That foxy flavor, you know, I think 𝑨𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, like Concordish, Jolly Rancher, grape Jolly Rancher flavor. That's really fun. I think a lot of people, when they try it, the 𝒓𝒊𝒔 rosé, everyone's like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's something's, and it's funny. It's like, just say what you taste. You know?
I mean, they do it with 𝒓𝒂𝒄𝒕 all the time. You know, like even whether it's like something odd like fresh cut garden hose or tennis ball or cat pee
racquetball
or whatever. You know what I mean? And they're just flavors. You know, and it's not like there shouldn't be this like, this is a good flavor and this is a bad flavor, or you know, they're just like compounds. And especially with 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, I mean, it's gotten such a bad rap with this like foxy thing, and really all that means is it has this chemical compound in it, methylenthranolate, that just like Concord grapes have a lot of methylenthranolate, and that's just what makes Concord grape taste like a Concord grape, like that grape candy kind of a note. And when you get it in, like 𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 is also a 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 hybrid, and it has that methylenthranolate, but I would say it's like to a lesser extent. And so when you kind of lower that amount of that methylenthranolate, it's instead of going from that grape candy, it kind of turns into this raspberry or like this strawberry cotton candy kind of a note.
That's cool.
And which I think is like really, and like, I don't know what's foxy about it, but I think it tastes amazing. And especially, you know, I think with, like you said, the natural wine community, I think these like just fresh, vibrant, lush, fruity flavors are really exciting, you know, and especially when the aromatics like are over the top and
well, and I think with Napa, with what they're going through, Napa and Sonoma, seeing so many people not being able to sell fruit this year, and people complaining about the industry being flooded with certain varietals. Like you were saying, I think this might be a good time to show that there is another part of the industry where young people are willing to spend their money, they're willing to explore. So it might be smart to start trying to grow a small amount to let workers, let winemakers work with this stuff. You know what I mean? To let them try their hand at it. Actually, do you think we could get 2 glasses to try this? Yeah, it seems like a very interesting time where we are, because obviously it did work commercially in the past. People were growing hybrids, you know, and they seem to all understand, you know, for weather reasons, phylloxera resistance, but it was made on a commercial scale. So it is totally possible again. I think one of the things I wanted to say about the future, I can pretend. The future of like hybrids, I kind of would love to participate with you, other friends that are doing this, would be some kind of like botanical garden at some point. You know, a viticultural garden that has all of these varieties growing, that's open to the public, so they can.
Well, that's kind of what Alamany is, right?
That's it's the beginning of this.
Yeah.
And then one day I'd like to take it a little bit bigger and do something to where people can walk by, see the amphilography.
Wow, I can see it.
See the story of it, who bred it. You know, all of these types of situations. I'd really love to work with digital amphilography, to maybe one day work with AI on scanning these things, being able to find parentage. Who knows how far we could take it? You know?
Wow, you just blew my mind. That sounds really cool.
But this is special because this is from Davis, UC Davis, the 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 Vineyard, and this is Rhyperia. How do you pronounce it? Girondia.
Jordiana. Yeah, the California grape.
𝒓𝒊𝒔.
𝒓𝒊𝒔. Yeah, like Norton is like a 𝒓𝒊𝒔 hybrid.
And a couple of others, but this is the second year we've made this.
So, but this is all just native grapes.
This is native grapes.
Wow. Oh my god.
𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 tried this before. Steve Mathiasen let him try a bottle, and he thought it was vinifera. This
Amazing.
is wild, dude.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, this is,
How cool.
dude, this on the palate to me is so special. It's, yeah, on the nose it's really pretty, but like,
Beautiful. There's like no like quote unquote like even like off flavors
no.
or
And this was made by the apprentices.
yeah.
So they got to make 100% wild species
This
wine.
is so cool, Chris.
This is to
This
me
is what I'm
I
talking
thought-
about. It's like this is like
Yeah.
this is the most authentic like American wine that has ever been made. I mean, really. It's like multi-American native species.
I mean, imagine if we did this regionally. Imagine if 𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 and different.
Oh my god. It's so good.
It's crazy, right? The acid's high, but it's good. The fruit, I don't know. The fruit's wild because it's like, it's almost like you can't
Yeah.
explain it, but it's super cherry,
Yeah, super cherry.
which is wild.
It has like this like lightness, you know, where like some of the which is kind of interesting to me because like some of the hybrids that I'm working with, like Lenoir and 𝒂𝒂 Noir, there's so much extraction that happens just because the color is like so intense, and it's something that I kind of like. I wouldn't say I fight against it, but I try and lean away from it a little bit and try and get like these lighter, prettier versions of that. So this is like so cool to see this because this is all just native grapes, and it does have this really beautiful lightness like on the mid palate, but at the same time there's like so much complexity and so much there, and it has this like nice structure and these like soft tannins and
It's fun making it because it's similar to Filoli, where we go through, we taste without a refractometer, just seeing where the acid's at, where the sugar's at. This is crazy though because some of these varieties make your throat itch, like when you taste them. Like,
yeah,
they're
there's this histamine thing that happens.
peppery, wild, but none of
Yeah.
that translates to this.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when I'm picking, I'm like, oh God.
Well,
like,
yeah, I
this
will
is
say that
okay.
even with those varieties, I think all that goes away in the fermentation process. So yeah, some of the, I think it's like, and I don't know actually, but I think this is like a 𝑨𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆 thing where you get, there's this histamine response. Like I've gotten it when I've stomped on some 𝑨𝒓𝒂𝒃 hybrids where I get like my feet get real itchy.
Yeah. That's funny.
But it doesn't like translate through to the wine. It is just like it's on the fresh fruit.
There's that one grape at Filoli though we still have to try and work with, that red giant.
Yeah.
So it smells.
So yeah.
It smells like animal, like animalic in a way that. Same thing. It's hard to describe. Like when people say Sauv Blanc cat pee, this is like tiger piss,
Yeah.
lion pee. Like it's so pungent.
Yeah.
That. What's so funny though is last year the birds completely stripped that vine, which I don't understand what they found appealing about it.
Yeah, well, I mean that must be why it is so aromatic. It's attracting the birds to eat the fruit, to disperse the
Pass the
seeds
seeds,
and
yeah.
stuff, Which I think that's why I think a lot of the wild varieties are so aromatic, is for that reason, because they are it's the pure native species. So I mean it's trying to attract birds and mammals, and
Right.
so there's all these aromatic compounds trying to, which also make it interesting in the wine too. Like vinifera has this spectrum of color and flavors and chemistry. Well, now when you introduce new species, now all of a sudden like the flavor spectrum gets so much wider, and the color spectrum gets so much wider because now you're introducing these different grape species that have new flavors that we've never really, in some cases, have never experienced in wine, which I think is so exciting about it. Like there's this strawberry cotton candy thing with 𝑨𝒓𝒂𝒃𝒍𝒆, but that's just like one of the species, and I'm really excited to like figure out these unique flavors, that are in all of of these grape varieties.
It would be cool to take Filoli and like actually write down the notes of each variety
Yeah.
by themselves.
Every
and
time
then
when
that
we're there and we're
breeding,
tasting the fruit, I like have I have like a very similar thought, and then it never happens.
a flavor map. Because
Yeah.
because it's interesting
Yeah.
when you think about, so FAMU has like a huge muscadine program. A bunch of these places, it makes
Yeah.
me wonder how great breeders are going about, like do they take pepperiness from this one? Do they take, sweet, salty from another, that kind of thing? Because when we're thinking about the future of wine coolers, that's what attracted me to this is like these weird flavors of like strawberry kiwi almost, and I think that could be really interesting in finding how do you make that eventually, because the table grapes, we see it with cotton candy, we see it with all of these funny, strange commercial table grapes that have come up over the last years. We're like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
How'd you do this? And it's just breeding.
It's just breeding, exactly. Yeah, and that's and I think a lot of those flavors that people are attracted to in table grapes, I mean, come from the American flavor spectrum.
Yep.
And so I think, like how do we translate that into wine, but then doing it in a way that's like maybe a little bit more restrained and, I don't want to use this term, but sophisticated, that's
Take it
not,
seriously.
it's not just about that one flavor, but it's also, maybe it's toned down a little bit, and maybe there's the other things going on, that make it more complex and balanced. But I think incorporating some of those fun, fruity table grape flavors into wine, I think, is really exciting. I mean, like when you have a wine shop in San Francisco, friend of a friend,
Yep.
and you've carried some of my wines there before. I mean, you talked a little bit about appealing to the natural wine community and maybe the younger generation, but like when you have these conversations with maybe the more traditional wine drinker, like what's their response? I mean,
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily, I feel like I'm good at selling wine,
Yeah.
but also just connecting with people and just being straightforward about what interests me and passing that on to them kind of as a gift. Letting them know that they're tasting something historic but also futuristic at the same time. And so like pouring plebes wine, getting to pour like the Noble Carlos, the muscadine,
Yeah.
or
Oh my
getting
God.
to
Yeah. Those wines are so
Catawba.
good. Yeah.
When people try these things, or the La Crosse Brianna, like people all of a sudden have this response of like, wow, that was actually good.
Yeah.
Like you were gonna pour them something bad.
Right.
But it's fun. It's fun to convert them in a way to where then they start chasing kind of this hybrid dragon. Like they're kind of looking for that high again of, and it's no different than like apples. Also, when people try a red flesh apple and their minds are blown and they're like, I didn't know this is real. Like, oh my gosh, So it's fun. It's fun to be able to like turn them on to it and then let them start deciding where they want to go. Like, oh, I want something. They use the terms, of course, like funkier, or do you have something that's kind of leans more towards something classic, or you know what I mean? So like your white, I feel like is perfect for someone who does like a classic Chardonnay.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the inspirations for trying to make that wine, actually.
And it's fun because it feels like it has the notes of that people do want from a little bit of barrel presence. It has that structure, it has the mouthfeel, but the brightness and freshness of the fruit and the acidity, it's familiar to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how we can like push this forward and be like, you're not drinking something that's gonna scare you to death.
Right.
It's not gonna like wreck your mouth. It's not gonna, you know what I mean?
Like, I mean, do you find that, like, when you're trying to sell this stuff, I mean, what are people, how do I want to say this? Like, what actually interests them? Is it the environmental aspects, or does that kind of just like
all of it?
Or is it the unique flavors, or Like, is there, or is it all of it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
literally all of it, because I
yeah.
kind of go down the list
Yeah.
of, oh, this has like weird bubblegum flavors, or this has, you know, yeah, like you were saying, like raspberry, strawberry notes. You can almost think of this as like Beaujolais Nouveau, or, you know.
Right.
And it's really cool because I like to also talk about the vessel it was made in, all of that type of stuff, terroir, everything, you know. So I think a lot of that goes into it also, which is really fun because I feel like that then gets people interested in to see where the next vintage is going to be. But with Plebe also, you know, they just lost their winery. So,
terrible.
but talking to people about it, I'm like, you may not get to try these hybrids for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, I have to try this. I have to see what this is like.
Scarcity mindset, yeah.
But it's kind of cool
Yeah.
in a way that I'm like, these are scarce wines. They're not the big mass-produced varieties. You drinking this is something special. You want to show something cool to your friends at a party. Take something like this. I bet they've never had this.
Yeah.
And then most people are like, dude, that was incredible. Like, I don't know how to put words to it.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. But I find that if you are friendly with your clientele and are trying to educate them and not just speak down to them, most of them are responsive in a way that they're like, you just gave me something that now I can take to my friends and kind of show off a little bit, and
So
like,
cool.
did you know that this exists, or this, you know? So
Yeah.
it's fun. It's bringing them into the world of like why we get to nerd out.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a lot of work though.
It is, but I'm already sitting at the shop.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. No, I just mean like, it's like you know, they're hand cells like every time, you know, or at least I assume that. Yeah.
I mean, until they're not, and I think that that's what's cool about knowing who your clientele is. You know, I think I would say, like, say in a neighborhood like the Mission, with lots of cool hip kids, like a place like Bar Part Time, something like that would be able to probably sell hybrid wine without it. Like, they could probably have hybrid on the menu, like as like a red, white,
Really?
rosé hybrid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I mean, you see cider on
Yeah.
lists like that, so it's.
Yeah.
I think it's trusting that people are going to be adventurous and just having the right bartenders, the right staff that's going to like explain it to where people want to come back and be like, I want something more like that. Because I find that people end up leaning into Gamay, Pinot Denis, like all of those varietals for the same reasons.
Yeah.
They're like, I want something aromatic, potpourri, that little bit lighter style.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, I have this hybrid, and they're like, no thanks.
Until they find out, and then they start, and then that's knowing all the producers, and that's why like over those last couple of years of carrying these producers and like showing them to people, they start building that.
Yeah.
So, but it's a lot different here. I feel like New York definitely has more of a hybrid presence.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think those you know, these grapes are just more commonplace in other parts of the country. So I think, you know, selling hybrids in California is probably harder than anywhere else because it's such a novelty, or there's so much education that needs to happen.
Yeah.
You know.
Sadly, my biggest challenges are working on a public space. So it's not my own land. So the first year, a lot of the hybrids that I did have were killed because someone turned off irrigation without telling me.
Just because they're baby vines and
So stuff like that. It's like, and it's not like I have like access to lots of this material.
Right.
So that was like a dagger to the heart, where I was just like, no, like, you don't understand what you just did. Like, you know what I mean? Like that part kind of hurt, where I was just like, oh, all right, now I have to plant again. And then, so that part's kind of crazy. Same thing with Philolive, dealing with contracts and things like that. Now that they realize that they have a very amazing vineyard, it feels like they care about it.
That's true.
So now it's been taken seriously.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
now it feels like now I have to be more serious and professional about it, which is a great thing, because that means that a contract means that we're there for real. But it's hard. It's like, I don't know. For me, it's just grapes, and I just want to grow grapes and make wine. It doesn't have to be that serious, but I guess it's a good sign that they are now taking it seriously too. So
I mean, what about like, where do you see, or I guess maybe, where do you hope to see this industry in 10, 20 years?
oh man, I think I really want to see people making fruit wines. So I brought another book that's really cool that has like Bonnie Doon in this one. And it's awesome because it's talking about him making fruit wines back in the day. And this is like a book about, you know, wineries through the 70s. And there's a few producers in here that are considered natural wine even back then. So yeah, I would love to just see some kind of solidarity that elders and youth can like learn from each other, collaborate in weird ways, use land together, advice, facilities, but also push to more holistic farming, holistic practices towards their workers, make community actually real. Yeah, because I think, you know, as we keep getting farther and farther with climate change, things getting more expensive in the economy, possible tariffs going up,
Yeah.
it feels like now is a good time for people to put their differences aside and just be like, I'm a farmer,
Yeah.
I'm a winemaker, I appreciate what you do, you understand what I do. How do we share our skills? How do we share our knowledge? How do we actually make this industry viable for everyone and make it long lasting? Because this last season felt pretty scary to watch some pretty big giants kind of say that they didn't know what was next, and to see a lot of writing about people getting rid of their land. But it makes me wonder, like, where is it going to go? What's going to happen next? But I don't know. Being in this hybrid space feels actually pretty secure. It feels fun.
Yeah.
So,
Amen to that.
yeah, yeah. It feels fun. It feels like we are doing something that is paying homage to people from the past, but also what they saw the future as.
Totally.
Also, you know.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, like this, you know, for example, this 𝒂💂 Noir that I'm growing, you know, it's a challenge that I appreciate having, but it's still a challenge nonetheless, where some of these hybrid varieties have so much acidity that's almost like my biggest challenge with the 𝒂💂 is how do I manage this acidity? So like in California, I'm picking these grapes at 24 bricks, and there's like this sweet spot where right around 24 bricks, you know, the sugar's not too high to where you're gonna get this like kind of out of balance hot wine, and the acid is like finally just dropped low enough to where it's still a high acid wine, but it's not like off-putting, or it's not too, you know, edgy. But for being a natural winemaker in California, I mean, I feel like this is something that's not really talked about enough, where, you know, if you want to, like, as a natural winemaker, I don't want to use any adjuncts or mess with the chemistry in the cellar or manipulate the wine in any way, but if you're also trying to preserve freshness and make these energetic wines, you know, a lot of the trend is just to pick lower and lower and lower, and to preserve the acidity in the grapes, and which is an obvious thing to do, and you know, and you can get these really like light, ethereal wines, but you also miss out on the full flavors of like fully ripe grapes. And so I think that's a really, especially for out here in California, where we have the sun and the heat to fully ripen these grapes, where we don't have to worry about losing all the acidity. So it's definitely one thing in the cellar that it's challenging, because there's you have this really these high acid grape varieties, but I think out here in California, this is something that we should be looking more into, or these just like naturally high acid varieties.
What about like pectin also?
Yeah, so like 𝒂💏 has a higher pectin, but it's the same thing. I mean, I think once the grape is fully ripe, it naturally just like softens. And then, so with the 𝒂💏 specifically, I stomp it and then I let it just sit and macerate for a few hours. And just as long as the fruit is fully ripe, the pectin kind of just softens, and then I press it with the stems and everything. And so it's actually, it was something I was worried about at first, but it has been a non-issue. Yeah. And then also, like, another stigma, I guess I would say, that some people have against hybrids is this like lack of tannin, where there are a lot of hybrids that don't have like the tannin that they're looking for, and maybe some vinifera or some European wines. But I also have not found that to be true, especially out here in California, where you're ripening the grapes, where you get this stem lignification, and you're able to fully ripen the fruit. The tannin, like when you talk to grape growers around the country that work with hybrid varieties, a lot of times they say there's like tannin in there, like in the grapes, it's in the fermenter, but it falls out, whether it's in barrel or just over time. But what I have found is when you're able to fully ripen the fruit, that tannin that maybe typically falls out, actually it stays in the wine better, and I don't really seem to have, at least from my experience, there's not this lack of tannin issue. So really, like, a lot of these old myths, I guess, about hybrids, I mean, aren't really holding any water.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's on one hand, like, growing the grapes is you're working with a whole new species.
Yeah.
So like you don't really fully realize how much the wine industry has assumed that you're working with vinifera until you work with a different species, and then you realize, like, oh my God, this trellising system even like doesn't really work for this variety. And there's so much, the entire industry is just built on this assumption that you're growing European grapes. And so when you change the species out, it does, you almost have to like relearn viticulture to some degree.
Yeah.
But in the cellar, they're just grapes. I mean, grapes are grapes. And so a lot of times they have this really high acid, and you get these really, like in the fermenter, low pH, high acid grapes make these like really intense electric colors like during the fermentation. And so it's really beautiful to watch. And sometimes because these grapes are so aromatic, I mean, the whole winery like fills up, like the 𝒂💏 especially. Every time I pick the 𝒂💏, everyone like makes comments about how the whole winery just smells like raspberries and strawberries, And so you get these really intense aromatics, these like really pretty colors, and then this really bright acidity that is nice. You don't have to worry about lack of acid in your wine, and then you don't have to, if you add 𝑨𝒓𝒂𝒃 to your wines, you don't have to add as much, because you have this natural antimicrobial chemistry in the fruit. And so you can, if you add 𝑨𝒓𝒂𝒃, you can certainly add a lot less in your wines. And so that almost makes there is some challenges there dealing with the acidity, but I think the benefits of working with these varieties like far outweigh any challenges. At the end of the day, like, they're just grapes, and as a winemaker, like, your intuitive sense just kind of takes over, and you'll be able to figure it out.
That's awesome.
That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.